Hello, and welcome to Watershed Moments. My name is Rhonda Pendell Charles, representing Ward 3 on our Annapolis, Maryland City Council. The first quarter of 2016 will prove to be an exciting and enlightening time for our Watershed Moments audience as we celebrate several significant milestones and events. We have titled our series of programming for the months of January, February, and March, Watershed Moments, a century of moments and movements. We will begin by focusing on the significance of the Rosenwald schools. In 1912, Booker T. Washington, nationally noted African-American educator at the turn of the 20th century, approached Julius Rosenwald regarding the education of colored children during this time. Mr. Rosenwald, the son of German Jewish immigrants, was a man of great wealth, known for building the Sears, Roebuck and Company empire. Mr. Rosenwald was moved by Mr. Washington's ideas and long-term goals to end the disenfranchisement of the vast majority of African Americans during this time. The partnership between Mr. Washington and Mr. Rosenwald resulted in a massive educational revolution. We're confident that you will find their story to be a unique human interest story, a story that exhibits the human condition and portrays the true meaning of the human spirit. And the Rosenwald connection to Annapolis and Anne Arundel County? Well, our Parole Elementary School, as well as our Lothian and Mount Zion schools, are schools that provide educational excellence and did so during this period of time. And today, we are so very pleased to welcome to Watershed Moments Mr. Charles Chesterfield Harris, who has lived in parole many years. Welcome, Mr. Chess, to Watershed Moments.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Well, I'm so glad that you're here. And we're going to talk a little bit about your early years down at Mount Zion, where you grew up originally. And tell us a little bit something about Mount Zion.
Well, it was a very nice place to live during that time. You have to understand now, we were in a segregated situation back in there. This is the I was born in 1924.
Oh, okay.
You see, and so the school days started when I was 5, 6, 7 years old, somewhere along that line. And there were a lot of things that you have to rely on, say like the tobacco and the corn. And we were very fortunate, the three of us, the sister, the brother, and I was the youngest of the three. And we were fortunate. This came from where we lived. We were living in a house, no ownership now, we were living. But the lady that owned the property in the house were elder white ladies. There were about 3 sisters around in different houses. And this was named Miss Annie. And Mama worked for Miss Annie, and we slid in the big house at the banister. You could slide up and down. And basically, that was the growing up. But these people were very, very nice to us. And some blacks coming along at that time with us, they weren't that fortunate. See, they were almost a slave type situation. See, but we were lucky. Pop was able to chauffeur the old lady around in the old car and all, and he could even use the car to take us to church.
Oh, wow.
So that, I like to say, the lady was just as kind and nice, and just like a grandmother to us.
Now, you attended Mount Zion Rosenwald School at that time?
Yeah, we had about approximately half a mile walk to the school. No bus service now. No bus. Everybody walked. We were down to Lothian or Mount Zion, whatever you want to call it, about 16 miles down from here. And what happened was the kids that lived, much as 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 miles, because you had Shadyside had a school and Deal had a school, and the schools were very well stretched out, so you had to walk, no bus service. The bus didn't come in until we went to high school.
Now tell us tell us something about your classes at your Rosenwald School at that time, and your teachers and your classmates even.
I wish, we didn't keep very good records, you know that, don't you? And I can't recall the name of the first teacher. She was a lady. I think her name was Bell. And then Colonel Duncan came along the latter years. And this was a situation where you had a cold, make the fires, get up in trying to bank the stove and keep the heat overnight, and all these were the things you had to deal with. So basically you didn't get a chance to really sit down and learn too much because you were after school. You had the tobacco farming, and you had a lot of things to do, and sitting in the school was cold and not the proper foods. You got this little bag lunch that you take with us. So things were a little rough, but we didn't realize how rough we were because that was a way of life at that time. You see, so but we survived. Let's put it that way.
Now we've been talking about the Rosenwald schools, and we've talked about Mr. Julius Rosenwald and the significant impact that he made on the colored children during that time. And you attended one of the schools, and so what Mr. Rosenwald did during that time was very far-reaching. What do you have to say about what Mr. Rosenwald did and him building the over 5,000 schools between Maryland and Texas?
Some information we didn't get. So we really didn't know anything about who started what and when and where. And like I say, we were very limited. And especially the males. These guys had to go to work on these farms and all. And like I said, just limited. So I never really had any background on who started the school and when it was started and how it was started.
Now that you know, what are your thoughts about Mr. Rosenwald today, even?
Oh, well, that was very good. Now, there's something that we have to consider, the hearts of men. You see, how we feel toward our brothers and sisters, and even the segregation thing or this Jim Crow thing at that time could be a terrible impact on your life if you allow it to happen like that. You see?
Right.
And when I went in the army was segregated. You see, if you allow me to say this. And the feeling you get toward the captain and all these guys were white, you know? And they were very demanding. They didn't like you. We had one captain to tell us, I don't like neither one of you. And the reason for it, that we were black.
Right.
So when you live in a situation like it, you get a little bitterness. And I had to deal with that thing. And I prayed that night and said, come on now, this is not fair to me. I'm hurting myself.
That's true.
You see?
Yes.
So eventually, especially when I got into the church, I had a whole different setup.
Right.
So this love thing come in.
Absolutely. So we're going to put up on our screen several videos concerning Mr. Julius Rosenwald and the history of the over 5,000 schools that he built, and a renovated school. There were some renovated schools in the United States as well. But we're going to move on to when did you move to parole, Mr. Chess?
In my early teens, this would be in the late 30s. And we moved up to Crownsville on the farm for a while, and then we moved into parole.
Mm-hmm. And your parents bought a home at that point?
My parents never bought a home.
All right.
If you allow me to get to that point about the home thing.
Okay, we'll get to that point, but we're going to talk about your schooling as well. And you moved here, and what school were you attending when you did move to parole in Annapolis?
We moved up there after we finished the grade school on Mount Zion Way.
Okay, and what school did you attend when you got
here? We came to Wally Bates.
Wally H. Bates.
Yeah.
All right, and that seems to be a popular school during your period of time. Is that correct?
Yeah, right.
All right, and tell us a little bit about Wally H. Bates High School and your experiences there and the teachers, classmates, and how do you feel and what did you feel about the school during that time?
Classmates are just about gone by now. I can't remember not even one person that's still living.
Okay.
Everybody. There was one outstanding classmate, this guy named Saunders Chase.
I've heard the name.
Right, he and I, this is 1941 when we finished Bates, 37 to 41. Mm-hmm. And Chase was very, that guy had a mind you wouldn't believe. Anyway, he came to be an architect. He went to move to Texas, and he came back and he did the work for the Bates High School, design. You know all about that.
Yes, I've heard that story before.
And, you know, every time I know about that, it really helps me to remember that I knew a guy like that.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. How about some of your teachers at Wally H. Bates?
Well, the most understanding was the male teachers. And there was, Marshall was the one who was the carpentry work.
All right.
And I learned a little bit from him.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
and
right.
You say you haven't got to that yet, but what I really learned was the house building thing.
Oh, yes, yes, and we'll get to that in a moment.
get to that.
But
Well,
so we are going to move up to the point at which you graduated in 1941 from Wally H. Bates High School, and we're going to take a little break at this time and get back to Mr. Chess after a moment. We're back with Mr. Charles Chesterfield Harris here in parole on Watershed Moments. And we left off with Mr. Chess graduating from Wally H. Bates High School in 1941. Now, Mr. Chess, tell us what happened after graduation.
well, there were some odd jobs after that, and one in particular was Carver Hall. I was a bellhop. Folk with the bags come in with the bags, and we take the bags to the room, and you get a little tip. Not very much, but it was a big help at that time. And there's one guy in charge of us named Marcellus Hall. I know you heard about him.
I've heard of him.
Right, right. So we learned a lot from him. He taking us on as his children in a sense.
Oh.
And he instructed us, you got to have a bath every day. You got, the little personal things, which was good. Yeah. So in that work, and I was able to even show him around in the taxi cab because he never drove a car.
Oh, okay.
So that was good. That was a good point.
So that was the job after high school?
After high school was Carver Hall and the bellhopping thing.
All right. Now, that was in Annapolis?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Everybody knew. Well, that was the only big hotel we had, when the guests came in.
Okay.
The midshipmen, girlfriends, and acquaintances and parents and all. Oh, yeah, it was a big thing. Carver Hall was it.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Now, after Carver Hall.
And the Carver Hall in 1943. Yeah, when did I go in the Army? 43, yeah. 43 to 46, yeah.
All right.
Okinawa was my mainstay, 13 months on Okinawa.
And what was that experience like?
I was in a port battalion, unloading the ships and all.
Okay.
And you was out there, when you went out on the ship, you stayed out there till they got unloaded, 20, 30 days sometimes before you get all the merchandise off. And in the meantime, you were being bombed at or shot at during the day and the night. Yeah.
That's dangerous.
Yeah, but God brought me through the whole thing. I couldn't, that's protection for you.
All right.
And I appreciate it.
All right.
Yeah,
All right.
it was something.
Any other
And
experience?
but I don't like to hassle to talk too much about that war thing.
Okay.
Main thing that bothered me was the war was that we were fighting a segregated war. Think about it now. We fighting the same enemy. And we can't even live together. Come on, the whites over there and the blacks, come give me a break. So that was a part of that I was telling you about that bothered me until I got over it. Come on.
Then you got over it, and then you got out.
Yeah.
And you came home.
Yeah.
Came back home. And what happened when you came back home?
Well, there were some more little odd jobs around. I even went back to Carver Hall in '9. Then my sons called me and wanted a little help down there or something. And but the main thing that I did was able to build 3 houses. That was one of the biggest things I think in my lifetime.
And you
I
can
built-
credit that to Mr. Marchand from Bates
That's
High
what I
School?
was talking about. Marshall was the leader of this thing. I built them, still living in the one I built, which was around 60 years ago. I built one where mother and father lived. I built that house, and my brother lives in another one right now. So I built those 3 with my own hands.
Down in the Dorsey Heights
Dorsey
community
Heights,
of Peru.
right. The 2, one on each side of the street down there. And that was, I think that was one of the greatest things in my lifetime to do something for somebody, So.
And so after your
After-
short stint at Carver Hall.
Oh, then look, we want to leave out the marriage now. You didn't say
Oh, we
anything
don't wanna
about the
leave
wife
that
there.
out.
Now you got to mention the wife in this thing.
Got to do that.
Yeah, and the boys and the girl.
Absolutely.
3 boys, 1 girl. We haven't got to that yet, maybe.
But have we?
Oh, I don't know. You know how I talk, don't you?
Is that after Carver Hall or during Carver
That
Hall?
was a couple of years after the Army, yeah.
After the
Army. Yeah, I was
Army.
on Carver Hall when I was
Okay.
married and all.
So you came back home and started your family.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
and then at that point you needed a really steady job.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
and what happened?
Well, we talked about the job at the Naval Academy.
Okay,
during that time.
you went to the Naval
Yeah,
Academy.
that was the main job
All
for about
right.
30 years or better.
Oh, wow.
But
So-
in the meantime, I was driving a taxi cab.
Okay, all right, you were driving a taxi cab.
Right.
All right, and you were working at the Naval Academy.
Right,
And
two
tell us-
jobs.
Two jobs.
Yeah, you gotta have two jobs.
Gotta have two jobs.
We had a family of four and a wife and all.
Okay, and so tell us a little bit about your experiences at the Naval Academy.
Cook. It's a job that I really never liked. But that was, but look, come on, we talking about availability and we gotta have a job to take care of the family.
Absolutely.
But it was my best thing, cooking something. And then I got married, and my wife was an excellent cook. And still is.
Oh, yes.
So you sort of take the burden off the frying the potatoes or the onions and all that. But I did it for like I said, 30 years.
30 years.
Yeah.
You made the best of not the best situation.
That's it, exactly.
All right.
Right.
And you met a lot of interesting people there, I'm sure.
Oh yeah. I met a lot of folk came in the city hotel. We met it, and then the folk that we worked with.
Okay, at the Naval Academy. Quite a few people, would you say, who were in the war, possibly your age, worked at the Naval Academy. Is that correct?
The majority of the workers there came from being in the Navy, the Navy fellows.
Okay.
Most of them had already retired from the Navy when they came in there.
But many civilians, many African-American civilians worked at the Naval Academy. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, many people in this area.
Yeah, basically, that's where most of them were from. Like, they lived in Eastport and Parole, and those guys walked every day to work.
Right.
See? So that was another thing.
And so many of them also worked probably at Crownsville State Hospital.
Yeah.
And some worked at Fort Meade.
True.
And some worked for the school system. Yeah. So those were probably the mainstays of the job, as well as probably jobs that were afforded in the old Fourth Ward. Is that correct?
Right.
All right. Okay. So that was the primary source of income.
Yeah, plus my side job with my taxi cab.
With your taxi cab.
And I was fortunate enough to own the cab that I drove around.
Oh.
So I was at liberty to park my car when I had some carpentry or something to do.
Oh.
See? And the job, most time, the Naval Academy cook job, we went to work most time at 5 in the morning, got off at 1.
Oh.
So that gave me the rest of the afternoon to help wear myself out over the years.
So you were a very good manager of time.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
And still
right.
try to be.
Still
Yeah.
try to be. Now you can tell us a little bit more about your taxi cab driving experiences.
Oh, you meet a lot of interesting people. I had one guy in particular that worked for the Reader's Digest.
He was a writer.
Writer. Yeah, one of the big-time writers, one of the best they had. A guy named Reed. His daughter still calls me on it, this many years ago. And she still called me up and tell me how fortunate she was to have me in her life too, because she was just a little girl at that time. So that's a good thing. Anyhow, this guy was part of my mainstay. When my money got short, hey man, I need to go to the airport. Yeah, sometimes 2-3 times a week. Then I had to pick him up when he come back over in D.C. airport and all.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
So-
yeah. And I had some good customers.
All right.
Well,
Very good.
very good.
Very good.
And the midshipmen went away once a year at graduation time, and they caught the taxis to go to the train station in Baltimore.
Oh, so you did take many people back and forth to Baltimore as well as to the airport.
Yeah.
Now we're going to also show Mr. Chess a video and where to find it on the screen concerning desegregating of the Baltimore City schools. So you were also traveling to Baltimore on a semi-regular basis.
Yeah, quite a
So we'll
bit.
show that video and where we'll show that information on the screen as well. And Mr. Chesterfield, I would like to thank you so very much for being on Watershed Moments today. We've certainly enjoyed your presence here and your stories and your experiences that folks out in the audience will certainly benefit from. And we'd also like to put in a plug for our program, our production that we had at the Walter S. Mills Parole Elementary School back in October. Annapolis, One City, Three Friends.
Most of the states
And
here
you were
in the
part of that
United
Free
States.
Friends Triumphant.
And
Is that
I've
correct?
had a
True.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I enjoyed every bit of it.
Absolutely. So did
And
I.
the family enjoyed it.
Yes,
Yeah.
we all did. Thank you so very much again for appearing on the program.
We've been downtown and we've been all around town and we've talked about parole and all kinds of things. And Miss Kern, you got some other, oh boy, Miss Jones Kindergarten.
Yeah.
Who remembers Miss Jones Kindergarten? All right. All right. At Mount Olive Church where they had their graduations. And that was a big high time. And we have a lot of the churches still in parole. King's Apostle and Cecil still there today, and Beacon Light where Mr. Chess is a member. So and Second Baptist, we had many churches in parole that are still thriving. Capital Church of Christ down in Forest Villa. So we have quite a few religious institutions, and in town we got the Helping Hand. So that's there and doing things. Did anybody remember the old parole shopping center?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, boy.
Oh, yeah.
What were some of the stores in the, Miss Pearl, you know about the old parole shopping center?
She worked
Yes,
there.
you
Yeah,
did.
she worked at
She
Brits.
worked at Brits.
She worked in Brits.
So, Miss Pearl, what did you do at Brits? Tell us a little bit of something what you did at Brits.
Oh, I was just a salesperson
Oh,
at the
no.
Brits department store for 15 years.
You did more than just sell. What else did you do? You stood in the window, and what did you do?
Stood in the window.
Didn't you wrap gifts?
Yes.
Yeah, people used to wave at you. That's right. Don't be shy.
Oh, boy. Yeah, boy.
Do you remember, Mr. Chess, did you take people on taxi cab, the parole shopping center?
Oh, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
numerous of times. Oh, yeah, plenty of times. Pearl, no, I saw Pearl. Talk with her. Yeah. I've been around these two a long time. Go way back. You know, we were in the church together for a long time. The trustee board and
You
all.
did wonders in Mount Olive.
Yeah, see that a long
Good
time.
old trustee.
Yeah. Only one left. You
And
said,
I don't
didn't
want,
you?
and
How
you
many
know
left?
what?
Nobody
I
but
don't
me. Out of the 15.
Yeah, and I don't want anybody to ever forget Mr. Newt Snowden, because he did wonders in Mount Olive Church.
Right.
Mr. Stone.
Tell you.
I'd take his job on the trustee board. when he
Yeah,
left.
yeah.
He went over to Beacon Light. And about 20 years later, I followed him over to Beacon Light.
Yeah.
All right, so we have a lot of places in parole.
Oh, yeah.
Parole Health Center
Yep.
and the Boys and Girls Club and
Yep.
and that sort of thing. So what kinds of, it was the best of times and the worst of times in the 1960s. We had color TVs and watched the soap operas and
Yep.
and the game shows and transistor radios and house parties and all kinds of things. But then we also had some other things going on in the 1960s. Go ahead, Ms. Catherine.
And don't forget when the boxing came.
Oh, wow. Tell us about the boxing, Miss Catherine.
Oh, they used to turn on the radio. They got a radio, finally got a radio. And when Joe Louis would box, them people would fall out if he would. They were so glad to have, to be able to, hear it. They couldn't see it, they could hear it. But they enjoyed it,
Yeah.
That was part of the entertainment.
Yeah, that was entertainment.
All
We
right.
had the first radio in our community by Anna Snowden. And we would go to her house, we'd crowd out her house because not too many had radios. And we would enjoy on Sunday evenings the stories that would
And we've heard from Mr. Charles Chesterfield Harris today about his experiences within the parole and Annapolis community. And we're going to also show you, I'm going to have a monologue concerning my experiences in the parole and Annapolis community. And a lot of that has been based on what Mr. Harris has said, as well as our interview with Miss Catherine Arthur Joyce.
How